Kלים Perik Vav Mishnah Gimel. This is an incredibly beautiful Mishnah. Sholosh avonim she'ason shtei kirim. 3 stones. Here, in the middle, and on the right. Sorry, let's do it for you. On the right, in the middle, on the left. These 3 stones are 2 separate kiros. And we had before, when you have 2 kiros made up of 3 stones, so each one has its own din. If a sheretz is hung in the space, in the toich of one of them, it's only that set of stones that becomes tomei. The other kira remains tahor. The problem is here, the middle stone, what's the status of the middle stone? The nafka mina is, of course, remember, once a klicheres becomes tomei, then it is also, apart from the fact that it is able to be metame, things that are hung into its toich, it's also able to be metame b'negia if something oichel and mashkin were to touch the outside of the klicheres. So you have to know what's called the kira. Where does the kira tamea, where does it stop? Says the Mishnah, nitmeis achas min achitzoina. This expression the Chazon Ish already finds a bit difficult. It sounds like, the word achas min achitzoina sounds like one of the outer ones become tomei. Sounds like we're talking about the stones. But it's not the individual stones that become tomei, it's the whole kira that becomes tomei. There are only 2 kiros. So nachalama, it means one of the kiros, nitmeis achas min achitzoina means one of the kiros became tomei. So remember, we've got here, stone on the right, stone in the middle, stone on the left. And let's always assume that the sheretz is hung on this one, on the one on the right. That's called the chitzoina, nitmeis achas min chitzoina. So this kira becomes tomei, and this kira is tohor. What's the din of the stone? Ha'emtsa the middle, that stone in the middle, says the Mishnah, you split the stone. But not half-half. That part of the stone which is used on this side, which belongs to the right, then that bit of the stone is tomei. That part of the stone which is meshamish, the tahor kira, that part of the stone remains tahor. The nafka mina being, if oichlin or mashlin were to touch different parts of the stone, they'd become tomei or tahor, depending. Now, few things we have to explain here. First of all, a regular kira, the walls can be very thick. They can be a tavach 10 tefachim thick. A regular kira doesn't make a difference how thick the walls are. The whole kira becomes tomei. That's poshut. But we're not dealing here with a regular kira. We're dealing here with a stone. The only reason why this is called a kira, remember, is because the stone is mechuba betit lamata. So it's the chibur batit, which is the main, call it, ingredient of the kira. Because it's not the even itself which has the chashivas of the kira, although the even's called the kira, we therefore don't apply the rule that no matter how thick the wall is, it all becomes part of the kira. It's only that part of the even which belongs to the kira, which is meshamish the kira. And normally, Chazal tell us that the amount of stone required to be shofis or leo esak kadeira, in other words, the amount of stone which is meshamish the kira, is a tefach thick. So if you have a simple kira made up of 2 stones, mechuba batit, and the stones are very thick, then it's only that thickness of a tefach which is near the middle. It's that thickness which has a din of kira, which becomes tomei, and the rest of the stone is actually tahor. So, if the stone in the middle is more than 2 tefachim thick, then 1 tefach belongs to the kira on the right, and the other tefach belongs to the kira on the left, and the little bit of stone in the middle is tahor. But we're talking about a case where the stone in the middle is less than 2 tefachim thick. So now we have to decide how much of the stone belongs to kira on the right and how much of the stone belongs to kira on the left. So that we don't say a 50-50 split, we do actual usage. It may be, because of the particular kira, more of the pot on the right side covers, let's say, 60% of the stone, And when one uses the kira on the left, one uses 40% of the stone. Then the rule is hamshameshes is atmea. The 60% which is being mishamish, the kira on the right, is tummy. That part, 60% of the stone is tummy. And mishamish hatahira about that part of the stone, the 40% which is mishamish, the one on the left, belongs to that kira, and that part of the stone is tar. Next case. Nitla, I've got my two kirim. Remember, the one on the right is Tomei and the one on the left is Tahir. Nitla HaTahira. I now remove the outer Tahira stone. So now both stones belong, so to speak, to the Tmeah. So the din is taka huchleta hem tsois letuma. Or the girsa could be letmeah. The Mishnah Achreina tries to make a chilek between the two girsais, but pashtus there is no difference between the two girsais. So what the Mishnah is saying here, that when the outer tahar stone disappears, that stone which used to be in the middle now belongs to the kira. And under the normal rule of a kira made up of stones, you use a tefach of the thickness of the stone to determine the wall of the kira. So if originally the kira, let's say only 40 or 30% of the stone belonged to the kira, because that was the only bit that was being mishamish it, now that the outer stone has gone, the normal rule applies. One extends that thickness of the stone, of the tomei stone, up to a tefach under the normal rule that the thickness of a stone for shvisas kedera is a tefach. It's not the whole stone that becomes tomei, because the whole stone may be much more than a tefach thick. What happens, again, going back to the original case, I've got my three stones, and the tomei kira is on the right, and the Torah one on the left. This time, other way around, nitla hatameo. The tomei stone disappears. So all I'm left with is my kira on the left, and the middle stone, which belonged half to the kira tamea, now seems to belong all to the kira tahira. So the Mishnah says, because now we have what's called a complete nesitza, a complete destruction of the tomei kira, and therefore there's no tuma left, because it's gone. So everything left, the two stones remaining, are completely tahir. Nitmu'u shtayim hachitzonos. I've got my three stones. Go back to the three stones scenario. Now we've got a case, we've got three stones, and both are tomei. A sheretz was hung into each toich, so all three stones are tomei. Im hoisahem sois gedola, if the middle stone is so thick that it actually is more than 2 tefachim thick. So we said before that when we deal with a kira made up of stones, it's only the tefach thickness of the stone that belongs to the kira. So when we have more than 2 tefachim in the middle stone, we allocate 1 tefach to this kira, 1 tefach to that kira, and the middle bit of the stone actually remains tahir. Im hoisoim sois gedoil, if the middle stone is so big, it's bigger than 2 tefachim, the noise nezug de shvisa mikan. For this kira, you put enough stone called kadesh shvisa, you allocate a tefach thick to that kira. Ulazu, and to the other kira, kadesh shvisa mikan, another tefach for that. Vashar Torah, in the middle bit of stone, which is the excess of the 2 tefachim, is Torah, is completely Torah. But if that middle bit was less than 2 kadesh shvisas, then of course, hakol tomei, then everything gets bottled and it belongs somewhere other. This stone is bottled to the one and the right, to the one at the right and the left, and it becomes tomei, and it becomes tomei with the kiras. Fine. Now I've got my 2 kiras. Let's go back to the original story. I've got 2 kiras, the one on the right, the middle, the one on the left, and they're both tomei because a sheretz was hung into each toich. So my 2 kiras are both tomei. Now, nitlahem tzois, I take away the middle one. So now I have a very wide kira. Says the Mishnah, Im yacha lishboi saleha, yoyre gedoila, if it's if I can still be shofis, an enormous pot on the two outer stones, it's not that wide, it could still be used, then Tmeah, then the kira, the whole kira, in other words, the removal of the middle stone, does not render, is not called the sitza of the two old kiras. My new kira gedola is actually a merger of the two old kiras Tmeahs, and we don't have an asitza. However, hechazira, if I then put the stone back in the middle, I had my yoira, my large big kira tahira. I then put a new stone in the middle, and I now create two out of one. That's called an asitza of the one. And now I have a case where I have two new stones, but I have an asitza of the old kira Tmeah, and therefore the din is tahira. And the Achronim tried to explain why is it that the removal of a stone is not called nesitza, but the putting in of a new stone is called nesitza, but maybe this is not the time and place to go into that. Says the Mishnah, where I have an esitza, for instance, the case of a chazira tahira, I've got an esitza of the old two kiras. I've now created, where I have an esitza of the old big one, I now have two new kiros tahiros. Mircha, in order for it to be a new kira, I've got to have my chibur petit to the ground. As usual, every kira needs a miruach of tit, a cementing with tit, otherwise it's not called a klicheres. The normal rule applies. After the miruach of tit mekabeles tuma, it will be mekabel tuma only mishiasikena when you heat it up, kadei levashel ales abeitza, in order for it to cook a heat strong enough to cook an egg. This is the shir mentioned in Perek Hey Mishnah base, that a kira needs a hesek enough to be levashel allow beitza kalosh and a beitza and chicken's egg, trufan and sunim be'ilfas. Look up the dinim in that Mishnah over there. That was a difficult Mishnah, and Mitzvah Shem, the next Mishnah will finish off the Perek.